Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahi wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. This is just a karguzari of a trip that Allah Tabarak Ta'ala had allowed us to make in the year that had gone past. Not this year of Ramadan, but the previous year. After the month of Ramadan, we spent a week in the land what is known as Istanbul. There were many reasons why we wanted to go and see. There were many things we went looking for. But the history that it gave us and the lessons that it gave us was unique. And because now of this present happenings in the land of Istanbul and Turkey, then it has given many Muslims around the world like a wake up. Many perhaps never knew that there is something called Turkey and the level that it had in the Islamic history. So we are not going to discuss the political problems at the moment. That at the end perhaps we will make some indication towards. I want to take you into a journey into history, where you will understand what this land Istanbul was, why it was so important in the history of Islam, what it became. And like how Rasulullah indicated that Islam will be like this. There will be times when it will go on its uruj, like how the sun rises high. And there will be times that it will set very, very deep also. And in the land of Istanbul it saw two unique. It was at one time the center of the Muslim world, the Khilafat. And the power at that time you will understand as we go through it. And then there was a time that it reached the grave. That those people who took it never thought that Islam will ever rise again. But they never looked at the sun. That sun which is mighty, it also sets. But because the sun itself got no power, but behind the sun is the command of Almighty Allah who says rise, and the sun rises. So at one time, if whoever knew Turkey after the era of Mustafa Kemal, if he looked at that land of Turkey, he would have said, Islam will never come alive here again. And today if you go, then you will see the qudrat of Allah, that Islam will come alive in the whole world one day. When we went to Turkey, we already knew the history of Turkey, which a lot of you will not know, so we will go through it. But just putting you in the middle, the thought that I went to. When I went to Turkey, because we understood at one time what a position it had. And now Turkey was now Europe. Istanbul was Europe. So on the plane with us was European. It was a land which is unique in its beauty, the islands. But we were not going to go to those islands, we were going to go to the city. But we had a lot of gham in our heart, because in the aeroplane also there is nothing but alcohol. On the menu it is alcohol, and they're serving you alcohol. If you're not sitting next to someone you know, that man is definitely going to be drinking. And everyone you see around you, but there was a certain feeling you could have in the aeroplane which was giving alcohol. And in the airport, that there was a feeling that Islam is knocking at the doors of Istanbul and saying, I have come back again. And as I walked through the land in that 1 week, now at the present moment what's happening, it's like the sun has risen very high already. But this was 1 year ago where you still couldn't see it, but you could just feel something is happening. That Islam is in the air. So at that time, as I looked at it, one thought went into my mind. It's a verse of Quran, where Allah Ta'ala speaks of the Nabi of the time, Nabi Uzair alayhi salam. He walked past Masjidul Aqsa after the great tyrant king of that time, and today they know him as Nabakht Nazar. In the Arabic language we know him as Bukht Nasr. In the history of mankind they say there were 4 kings who ruled wherever their eye fell on. One was Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam. Whatever his eye fell on he took. There was never an army that could oppose him. One was Zulqarnain. These were 2 Muslim kings. And they lived on Islam to show wealth doesn't affect a man's piety. As long as he doesn't die for his wealth, he dies for Allah. Zulqarnain, when the time of his death came, he gave a unique wasiyat. He said that out against everyone's normal that the hands is in the janazah, is in the kafan. When you take my janazah, you put my hands outside my kafan. So people ask that, what will the benefit of that be? You have to be in. So this was his wasiyat. He said, so the world will know that the man who owned the whole world, Zulqarnain is mentioned in Quran also. When he died, he also went empty-handed. What a message he left for the world. The well don't go with you. So there were two believers. The ulama of tafsir said wherever their eye fell on, they took over. Sulaiman alayhi salam, Bukht and Nasr. And then there were two disbelievers. Among the disbelievers, wherever their eye fell on and they took over, one was Namrud. We heard of Namrud in the time of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam's beginning and end was in the emperor of Namrud. And finally in his time, Allah Ta'ala destroyed the tyrant king. But he was the beginning of evil, Namrud. And then the end of that empire, when it was on the heights of his power, was this Bukht and Nasr. It's like how we say America today is on the heights, but now it's falling. So that final, Bukht and Nasr was at the end. And in Islamic literature, there's a lot of Bukht and Nasr. And the dreams that he had with regards to the people of this ummah. And regards to the happenings, what will happen one day in our time. But that's a long story. In his time also he had the same dream, or today we call, whether they say the Zionist world or the Freemason or Illuminati, or what we say the world of Shaitan got a dream. That the religion of Allah must never survive on earth. So at that time it was the masjid of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Bukht and Nasr was in the lands of Iraq, Babylon. And a mighty empire he created out of magic. Because when you go into this world of Satanism, then magic becomes your tool. So the shayateen world, they indicated towards him that he must go towards the mighty masjid of Sulaiman alayhi salam. And we all know that masjid, what it was, built by the jinn. It was the biggest in the world. And Quran speaks about it. That when that enemy entered, in the 15th juz, Allah Ta'ala describes in detail, that when they entered, then they tore that masjid into pieces. What we see with the present Iraq and Syria, this was like blink of what Bukht and Nasr did. When he entered the land of Aqsa at that time, the books of tafsir write that when he left, there was not a single copy of the Torah to be found in the entire world. That is why years later Allah Ta'ala would inspire a Nabi Uzair alayhi salam to rewrite it from memory. So that another copy could be given to the world. He made sure, like how we say when they come in, they look for the Quran. And they said, we will take the Quran out of the world. But the Quran they can't. But at that time the Torah never have that protection. Not a single copy of the Torah he left. The masjid was raised. Sulaiman alayhi salam's masjid was never going to stand after that. Not a single scholar was left in that land. Either he was executed or he was taken as a prisoner to the lands of Iraq. And the distance between Sham and Iraq in that era was it's like you'll never come back. In that scene of blood and chaos and rape and whatever, when it was all done and flat. So Quran speaks that the Nabi of the time, some Mufassirin have said a pious man of the time, he walked past. He had his donkey, he had some food, and as he walked past, then he looked at that sad sight. And that's the same sight we look at many times, the land of Iraq, and we look at Syria. And if you had known the history of Istanbul, you would have looked at it also. And that Nabi then he said, Anna yuhyi hadhihi Allah ba'da mawtiha. That how will Allah ever give life to this land after it's been made dead? Can never happen. Because he was told that this will be the land of the Anbiya. But when he looked at it, and not a single believer, not a single book, not a single place of worship, flat. So Allah Ta'ala says, فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ عَامٍ. There and there Almighty Allah said to that Nabi, pass away. And there he passed away. There and there. ثُمَّ بَعَثَ. After 100 years he was told, come alive. Wake up. 70 years the Mufassirin write after he was told die. Meaning after the land was flat. 70 years after that, Almighty Allah started a revolution of religion. And the people from the land of Iraq started coming back to Sham. Because religion got a magnet. You want to see the magnet, look at the Kaaba today. And no matter how expensive it is, when Allah's magnet pulls, the whole world will go towards it. Sham's magnet started, Syria. And the scholars from around started moving to the land. They came and they re-erected the masjid. Money was available. A new building was put up. A new environment was created. And now you say like, see, the masjid is here, the musallis are here, everything is happening. Now the thing was bristling with iman. And then after 30 more years, 100 years on the dot, Almighty Allah said to the Nabi, stand. And when he stood, and he looked around and he said, where am I? Because as though he went to sleep last night, and he saw no masjid. And he saw not a single believer. And he saw no one reading the Torah. And he woke up the next morning, and he said, everyone reading the Torah. And everyone going to the masjid. And he said, wow. And Allah Ta'ala left that message in Quran for the people of this ummah, that if ever you see scenes in history which make you cry, then your own heart will ask you, how will Allah ever give life again? And Almighty Allah in Quran said, give it 100 years and I will show you my revolution. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Inna Allah yab'athu li hadhihi al-ummah ala ra'si kulli mi'ati sana. That this ummah must never lose heart. Because at the end of every 100 years, Almighty Allah will make alive a unique nation. May yujaddidu laha deenaha. That if the deen was almost dead or dead, that man will bring it alive again. This ummah will never see another Nabi coming. But Almighty Allah blessed this ummah such that you will have people in this ummah. And when we say this, then we also say to the people listening, and we say to ourselves, because the promise was made that in every new spring of Islam, after every autumn and winter has to be spring. It comes in the narration that Islam is a garden. The gardener is Allah. And in every new era, the gardener will take out new flowers for this nation. So when you hear that and it's going to happen, then every parent must make this intention that, oh Allah, let my child be that next flower. And who knows that your son, my son can be in this narration. That at the end of 100 years, Allah will make a man stand up with the flag of Islam. Today we are seeing a man called Erdogan. You hear his bayan. You say this is a man that when he was born, I don't think his mother ever dreamed that one man will be able to make such a revolution. Shake the whole world, Muslim and non-Muslim. So to go quickly how much we can, we will go into the history of this land. It began as the land, if everyone went to school, he learnt of someone called Constantine. Constantine was the mightiest of what we call the Roman Empire. In the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, two empires ruled the world. One was the Persian, one was the Roman. But many years before that, this Constantine came. And he gave them the beginning of that power. And the Roman world separated. And the one went on to this side, what we call Constantinople. After this land was built by him, Constantine, he was the mightiest of the emperors. And he was deep into the worship of the shaitan. He was a Persian worshipper, fire worshipper. But two things that he did. He established the worshipping of shaitan on a very high level. And the second thing he did is he and his mother accepted Christianity. So the world of the Christians suddenly fell for the trick. Like how many people fell for the trick of Mustafa Kamal, which we will discuss. And they fell for the trick of Ayatollah Khomeini, which we might have time to mention. He was also a trick. He was a Persian worshipper deep in the worship of Satan. He was told by Shaitan, you must become Christian. When he became Christian, the whole Christian world accepted him as the savior. Because it was the first time that a king of the world had accepted Christianity. And when he became Christian, then in the beginning, for a few years, he had all the ulama, the scholars brought. He would discuss with them, he would act like whatever they want. And very soon, one scholar who he feared, that was removed. And his own scholars were brought in. And before he died, the religion of Nabi Isa alayhi salam was forgotten in the world. And the religion of Paul was the hypocrite in the era of Isa alayhi salam. But Constantine made his religion alive for the Christian world. Until today, the Christians only know the religion of Constantine. It is a Persian religion. They brought in Christmas, and they brought in their Easter, and they brought in their fire, and they brought in their trees. Whatever came in, he and his mother brought it in. So he was a Satanist, and he was a Christian. And he had a mighty Constantinople established on his name. Now he built this place. As the thing was done, in his lifetime he never completed it, completed one after him. The purpose of the completion of this thing could be seen when they completed it. They have this mighty, what is called, you gather the whole country or the whole world, and everyone comes for the opening, and people are slaughtered, and it was a filthy time in their time, where people of deen would be brought and would be killed, and whatever would happen would happen. But when the thing was done, then the man who was the next emperor, he said a statement, which until today when you go to Istanbul, they will have that in the books. That he looked up, he was high on the top, and he's looking at the entire building, and he said, Solomon. And then whatever in his language, but the translation became this. What he said was, O Sulaiman. Because remember, Sulaiman alayhi salam put up the unique Masjid al-Aqsa. And the jinn had to do it for man. And they were never happy to do it. So when he put this up, he said, Solomon, you thought you built something big, we built something even bigger. Now what a statement for a Christian to make, because it was a Satanist saying it. To say to, because Sulaiman alayhi salam said one dua, when Masjid al-Aqsa was built. He said, Oh Allah, give me such a kingdom that will never be given to anyone after me. La yanbaghi li ahadim min ba'di. The shayateen hated Sulaiman alayhi salam. So their whole life effort until today is to relive the empire of Sulaiman alayhi salam. To be able to get that amount of power that we can say we did better. So when they put up that thing, and he said, we beat you. They never beat, but it had so much of pride in that statement. They put up such a unique structure, that this was the center of the entire Christian world. It was known as the most beautiful in the lands of the Romans. Whichever army became an army that was strong, their first eyes would fall on the land of Constantinople. But they write for 1,000 years, whichever army went to conquer this land failed. So now you understand what a powerful land this must have been. For 1,000 years, whichever army went to conquer, they failed. The reasons of their failing, they have written it. They explain that when he built that, he searched for this land. If now you have to go to Istanbul to understand this, and you need a guide to take you on. Couple of reasons why no army could ever get it. The first is that it's a land which is surrounded by sea water on three sides. Oceans. The different oceans, you get Marmara and you get Bosphorus. There's a third ocean. One is the Black Sea. Then there's the Marmara. And then what is called the Golden Horn, the Bosphorus. So because you got water on three sides, so that also got walls, the land. So if any enemy ships would try to attack those walls from the water tide was too strong. So their ships would never manage to remain in those waters. So because of that tide, the enemy from that side would easily pound them, and then their entire ship would sink. So there was no way. There was one inlet which is called the Golden Horn. But you have to go there to understand this now. The Golden Horn is because it's in. On both sides it's land and it's a small cut. Because of that cut there, the tide is very low. It's like you're moving in a lake. So if the enemy could get their ships into the Golden Horn, from there you could launch attacks on the wall. So to prevent that, they had a 300-meter chain, which would stretch from the one area to the other area. So when the ships would come, they would put up this chain, and the ships would be on the other side of the chain. And then they had the second chain of what was called the naval, the Roman naval. So they would fire against these ships. In their firing, they had one unique tool which was called Greek fire. Until today, they say that no one knows what is the asal ingredient of it. Because it seemed that Shaitan brought this for them. They even mention in their books that it was told by the man who brought it, that as long as you use this power, so this is a real Shaitan who would have brought it in that era. They don't know who brought it. But the person who gave it, Greek fire, he told them, as long as you got this power, no one will take over this land. So what this thing would do in that era, they would be able to fire fire. They had a siphon which would blow out. It would blow out fire which would move in water. And the water would not burn out the fire. So those boats that were on the other side of this chain, trying to break through, the naval is attacking them. They're having people to try to cut the chain. And suddenly fire starts moving through waters. And that would hit at the under of the boat. Suddenly those people would realize that our boat is burning. But the boat can't burn, it's in water. And that burn would create a hole, and that entire boat would then fall. As the boat would be sinking, you would get hundreds of soldiers in that water. And now it's ocean water. And as they're trying to save their lives, from this side they are being pounded by arrows. You can understand how many thousands and thousands died in those waters. Just for this land. That was the first. So the only way to get this land was what was called through the land, the last side. That through land if you can attack it. To prevent this, they had put up 3 walls. One was the wall which was very far from the city. Now if you climb over that wall, and they would have soldiers at so many places firing arrows. To understand it, you have to see this picture. That we normally think of a gun, that really shoots. But an arrow, how can an arrow really harm? Because we're thinking of one arrow flying in the air. But if you can picture 100 soldiers, at the same time are saying ready, aim. And when they say fire, at the same time you see 100 arrows moving in the same direction. Then you'll understand that even that man with the shield, he's not shielding himself from one arrow. At one time, I'm saying 100, but it was like sometimes 1,000 arrows coming in one direction. That is why the whole army, you would see, they put up the shield there. And you would see like rain of arrows falling. And just after that rain, the army starts running again. And the next rain comes, and they put up the shield again. And in that rain, then definitely the arrow goes through a shield. And then this one falls down dead. He falls down dead. As the arrows would be raining, then they would have a catapult of fire. So the man would say fire, and then you will see that whole ball of fire coming. So even if you put up your shield, now fire was falling on you. And then there would be so many dying in burning. And then they would have rocks flying. So that group who's trying to cross that wall, he has to face this entire, what we'll call, barrage of weapons. As he falls over the wall, he falls into a moat. This moat was huge, many meters, and many meters deep. When we were there, we made note of it. 9 meters in height. It was 20 meters wide and 7 meters deep. So now you fall 7 meters. Whether that moat had water or it never have water. In both times now you are open target. Because you got no horse with you, you had to already jump over the wall. Now you suddenly left your whole army and you fell deep. And now again the rain of arrows will hit you. So if anyone made it past that moat, which hardly anyone made, but people gave their lives for it. Because this was a land to get. After coming out of that moat, now you will find the second wall, and then there would be a third wall. So the chance of ever getting even near was like 0. They said so many armies came, but when that city would close its windows and put its armies on the top, then every army was defeated and went back. They said the other thing that this land had was if anyone said we'll put a siege on the land, that we will not go to attack the land, because to get in is hard. So from outside they would put a siege. This land had certain qualities in it that could last for 5 to 10 years without any help coming from the outside world. It was closed up. The first, they had water. Water was coming from outside avenues. But even if that avenue had to be shut by the enemy, until today if you go, they will take you to show you what is called a cistern. It is a huge underground container like of what we have a jug. This cistern would gather rainwater. And how many hundreds and hundreds of liters it must be containing. And it would ice it. So you would have ice bricks created. Huge. And if ever there was no water in the city,
All they needed to do was to put a little melting powder there. And as that ice would start melting, then the water would last the city for years and years. So they never needed water. They had their own farms in the city. There was one problem, the toilet. And if you have to go toilet for so many years, where the dirt is going to go? So they had that channels going into the ocean. That the dirt will go into the ocean. So there was no need for that also. And they knew within a 3 to 5 year period, whoever laid a siege on this land, then the rest of the Roman world would get the message. And within that 3 to 5 years, they would send their ships. So the ships' help would come after 3 to 5 years and the enemy would have to run. So in that manner, they pushed away every army that ever thought of coming. And it was history that once an army would come once, they would never think of coming again. Because you got such a defeat. At the end of Rasulullah's life, one he told Sahaba radiallahu anhum, I have seen the White Palace, what we hear of the White House. And it's something to think about, that who gave the name White House. It seems Shaitan got a thrill with this white story. Because at that time also the Persian Empire, the central headquarters of the Persian Empire was also called the White House. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he hit on one rock at the time of the Battle of the Trench, he said, I have seen the White Palace of the lands of Persia, Allah has given it to you. Those that were there wondering, what is he talking about? That you're going to take over Persia. And then he said, I have seen the palaces of the Roman Empire, meaning in what was called Sham. Allah has given that to you also. That the Munafiqeen could not accept. They started mocking. Meaning the Roman Empire is yours, the Persian Empire is yours. But then one day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sitting with Sahaba radiallahu anhum, he said to them, do you all know of one city which is put on water? Because I told you, surrounded 3 sides from water. He said, you know about one city like, they all knew this was the center of the Roman Empire, far from Sham. It was a land no one would ever dream about. So at that time when he spoke about Rome or Sham, and he spoke about Persia, but Constantinople you won't even mention it. But what a Nabi he was, and so simple. As he was sitting by them, like no big bayan, he called him, he said, come I'll tell you something. Comes in the narration, as Sahaba radiallahu anhu was sitting, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you know about one city which is on water? The Sahabi said, we said, oh Allah's Nabi, we know about it. Now listen to this word. Because if ever you get a chance to go to Istanbul, this words will teach you what was the power of Sunnah. One word of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first thing he said, لَتَفْتَحُنَّ الْقُسْطَنْتِنِيَّةِ, that I guarantee you one day you will conquer Constantinople. That if you know the Arabic language, you will understand that lam that comes, that noon that comes. That don't look at me in doubt. Guarantee, you're going to get it one day. For them it was like a shock. It was so simple. There was no unique bayan. There was no statement. You get that land. And then he said this phrase, which is going to teach you the power of Sunnah. And how much this Ummah honored the words of Sunnah. He said, وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ أَمِيرُهَا, that what a wonderful Amir that Amir will be. وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ, and what a wonderful army that army will be. Now perhaps when it was said, the value of that word was not going to be realized. It was going to be understood over the next 700 years. For which reason, until that point, whichever army went to the land and failed, they never dreamed of ever going back to the land. Because none of them had a statement from the Nabi saying, congratulations to you. When that word came out, the ulama write that every leader, after stabilizing his hukuma, his first dream was, if I can get the land of Constantinople, then I will be the one who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about and said, Mubarak to you. So the first was Hazrat Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. In his time everything became stable. And how it would be that the first to get the army ready and to get the Amir ready, they would call the Muhaddis of the era. And he would come in front. And in front of all the generals, the Khalifa would say to him, narrate to us the hadith of Constantinople. And then he would say, Allah's Nabi said, So Allah's Nabi said that you're going to get the land. One statement. Before that, someone could have given so much bayan that this country tried it, that country tried it, that country tried it, no one got it. That one word of the muhaddith that Allah's Nabi said you're going to get it. And then the second he would say, and Allah's Nabi said, what an amir, what an army. And then the Khalifa will say, who's ready to go? And everyone would stand up. At that time, Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu anh couldn't walk. He had a lump. He got the message that the army is going to Constantinople. He told his family, let me go. I'm not going to stay behind just to be in that wording. And Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu anh passed away there. And if you go there, you'll visit his area where he's buried. And you'll see what a ruhaniyat one sahabi can give out. Just in that town when you enter, it's a modern land. But when you just come onto his small plot, you just feel a fragrance of Iman. Now it's different. Now after the scope things will change. But when we went there, I never saw any place selling burqa, except the one which is called like Asal Fatih. It's a small area where Sheikh Mahmoud Afundi has done a lot of work. Otherwise nowhere you see burqa. But when you land at the area where Abu Ayyub Ansari is buried, they call him Sultan Iyub. So you won't even know like what is Sultan Iyub. But that man who got no dressing of sunnah, and that girl who just got married, and she wants to show off her beauty to the world, and the European in nature completely. But they also got so much of respect for Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu anhu, that they got married. The first place to go after you get married, go to the masjid of Abu Ayyub Ansari. That auntie with no scarf, she puts on a small scarf also. And she goes on one side and she stands and says, as though, oh my father, make dua for me and him. The child is born, we're going to make tahniq and you're going to slaughter. And you're going to call aqiqah. We saw the people bringing the child there also. For one dua. What a feeling when you stand at that cover. It's like, you'll have to be there to understand that there is a certain fragrance that Sahabi is pushing out in that land. And how Allah, what power Allah blessed Sahaba radiallahu anhu with. That was in the 58th year of Hijri. The Muslims at that time got such a defeat because of one of the Greek fire. In the time of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, they were just winning wars. But they landed here. And there was such a defeat. And it was the first time that he had to send the message to the army, come away. And on the return, the enemy chased them. And again they knocked their ship. There was a second defeat. And they say that when they reached, the entire army would have been like devastated. Would have said, we'll never try it again. That was in the 58th year of Hijri. But they say the only thing in history ever happened was the Muslim Ummah. That the next Khalifa came, Sulaiman bin Abdul Malik, in the 98th year of Hijri. If you think the difference between 58 and 98, the people whose fathers passed away there, they now hearing the Khalifa saying, let's go again. Normally you will say they went already, they couldn't make it, who are you going to make it? All he needed was, he called the muhaddith of the time. He said, they narrate the hadith, he said, وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرِ وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشِ. The whole army, who's ready? Everyone is ready. Second army is gone out, 98th year of Hijri. And they blessed now the Muslim armies that went, army after army after army. Until came the time of Harun al-Rashid. And then he also was going out, and the Roman queen, she made a truce with him. And at that time there was a lot of truces with the Romans. And they said that now we will not. And from that time the Muslim Ummah never went forward in their wars. Then came what was known as the Ottoman Empire. And it's a long history how it was established. But in this Ottoman Empire, a time came where there was a man called Sultan Murad II. And you can only understand what I'm saying now if you visit Istanbul and make an intention to visit the lands of Islam and show your children. We ourselves never understood what was Khilafat. You want to see it, you'll have to go in the top copy, move in the thing to understand this was the seat of the Khilafat. They ruled the world, the armies were coming here, the ulama were coming here, this delegation was coming, that delegation was coming, the European Western world was coming, and they were in awe. What was the Muslim power at that time? And Allah is going to give it back. So just a few years before. So in that Sultan Murad II, he is blessed with a son. Choosing the name for the son, because the son was born on the 27th of Rajab. So on the 27th of Rajab, if you get a son, you name him Muhammad. It was the natural. And they had a lot of azmat for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this Ottoman Empire, for Quran and for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So much of azmat that when this Ottoman Empire was finally given the Khilafat, first they were just what was called a state. But once when the Khilafat was handed, so the last Khalifa of the Abbasi, he said, because now I recognize you all as the next Khalifas of the Muslim world, whatever what we call tabarrukat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam we have by us, which was kept in the land of Iraq, because that was the Khilafat, he sent it over. When the Khalifa received it, they had so much of azmat for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Khalifa received it, that night went in the thought, how will I honor this tabarruk? There was the hair, and there was the tut, and there was other things of Rasulullah, the shawl, and the shawl of Fatima radiallahu anha, and you will see it there. Some they show, some they don't show. Some you just know it's in this box. And even that, just the things of Rasulullah gives it fragrance of Iman. If you visit the Topkapi Museum, then we don't go into the whole museum because it's all Western. But when you go there, you just go for the Islamic heritage. Or if you want to walk in the Western part first, where they show you the gold of the Ottoman empires and the beddings and all that, and everyone gets thrilled, it's so much gold, and they start working it out, how much money. But you see, Western world got no attraction. So you just look at it, and then you come into what is called the sacred chamber, they call it. As you enter that sacred chamber, you see the lights are dim also. And I saw that non-Muslim, because on the trip I looked at a lot of non-Muslims around me, how they view Islamic things. When that non-Muslim entered with me, I saw him also humbled, as though he was crying. And we're looking at what they're saying is the hair of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And for him I'm wondering, what it got to do with him? He must be thinking these people are honoring a hair. But when I looked at him the way he was looking at it, I said, even that hair gives out the fragrance of Sunnah. What a power in that. So to honor this thing, he's thinking how to honor it. So he put it in a certain room. And he made a law that there will always be someone reading Quran in this room. Not 5 hours or 10 hours. Always. So throughout the entire Ottoman history, day and night, there was someone reading Quran in that room. Something to think about. And when Mustafa Kamal came, he stopped it. And now it started again. But I don't think it's the whole day. Maybe it's the whole day, who knows. But when you enter first, I thought it's a tape recording. I said, now who's going to be reading Quran? And when you enter, then you see the Qari there. And he's reading. And as he's reading, it's going in the whole room. In the sacred chamber. One man reading Quran. And you got that environment. Imagine how much Quran was read in that spot. So this is a land to understand what it is. So he had a son, Muhammad. The father had so much of hope on the son that they said at the young age, he had his son sent to a madrasa, he memorized the entire Quran. Then he began studying ahadith. He became a faqih. He taught him maths, he taught him astronomy, but the main thing, he taught him how to fight. In teaching him how to fight, his father wanted to teach him how to rule. So at the young age of about 8 years old, he told him, you in charge of that state. Now think of this age, 8 years old. He wasn't going to play games there. He was told, you in charge of a state. When he came to the state, the best of the ulama which the father thought he had, he sent them with the boy. So among them, there was this great sheikh who is known as Sheikh Shamsuddin. This must have been a wali of his time. Because they say at that young age, he looked at Muhammad. Now imagine from the time when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, you will one day conquer Constantinople. Already 800 years have passed. 855 years. So you start losing the dream of ever getting that land. This man looks at this Muhammad and he says, that something tells me you are the one who has been mentioned in the ahadith. Now, what a man he must have. Because he said that. And the word Muhammad wasn't mentioned in the hadith. No name was mentioned. No sign was mentioned. But his ustad was just given that inspiration. He said, it's going to be you. So from the age of 8, the boy was already dreaming of Constantinople. At the age of 10, his father was the Khalifa, the Ottoman Emperor. The father says, I retire. So they asked, who's going to rule the world? He says, my son, even 2 years he is running. He's 10 years old, bring him. At the age of 10, this boy sits on the throne of Khilafah. Age of 10. Now imagine, what a young boy. And he's ruling. The only problem came after 2 years of rule. But he had the chance now to rule for 2 years. At what a young age. After 2 years of rule, because of his young age, the own people in the parliament, people outside were very happy. But the own people in the parliament, they started creating problems. So this young boy, now when you're there, you have to go visit a certain museum, not the Topkapi Museum, there's another one, which is called Panorama, 1458 or something. So there they have the letters that he wrote, this young Muhammad. So the one letter that caught my mind was he wrote a letter to his father, because he told his father problems are happening in the center here. The people inside the parliament, they are not happy with me. So now he's telling his father, you must come out of retirement and come back home. But how will a young boy write to his father? So he writes it in this manner. He says, oh my beloved father, from a begging son, I ask you to please leave your life of retirement and come back and sort out the matters that have been put on your shoulders by Allah. You can't retire and leave me in this position. He says, oh my beloved father, from a begging son, please come back. And then he skips a line or something, and then he writes there, and if you are not ready to comply, then from the Khalifa of the Muslim world to an ordinary layman, I order you to get up and come and sit here. What a young boy. But when you read that letter, the word is something else. We divided it with respect of a son, instead of the authority of the Khalifa. Come, the father had to come back. And he handed it over. So now the next 8 years, now at the age of 20, his father now passes away. So he had the chance to live as a Khalifa and to see where he made mistakes. And at the age of 20, now he sits. They say from the time of sitting, the people around him say, we cannot remember one majlis except that he would ask the people around him regarding Constantinople. He said he had like an urge or allergy for it. Like how you have an addiction, only dreaming of it. But now at that time they were not the Khilafat. We're calling him Khalifa, but it means he was emperor. Something hard to explain to you. Later on they got the Khilafat. The Khilafat was like a dead Khilafat in Iraq. It was doing nothing, they were doing everything. But they were not taking the name of Khalif. But they were doing law, the empire was spreading far. But because you're not the Khalifa, you can't order anyone in the Muslim world that we're going for this land, you all must come. So now he thinks about how to invite the armies of the different lands, because I'm not the Khalifa. They will tell you, a normal man, you Turkey, you got this place, your place, in your empire, whoever wants to fight. Why from outside you calling? So he speaks with the scholars how to get the whole Muslim world 835 years after the statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The scholars say that we will do. And it's written, their letters are also there. The ulama that were given the job, in their letters, all they had to do was narrate the one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ أَمِيرُهَا. What a wonderful Amir, but what a wonderful army. And then they will write, are you ready to be part of this army? And from the world, soldiers start coming. Pouring. This is not the Khalifa, but the honor of that words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If I can somehow get in, and so much of conviction, already 800 years have gone, but if my Nabi said it's going to happen one day. So the army start coming. He has thought a lot about what happened in the past, what mistakes were made in the past. So he prepares. In the preparing, he has his cannons made. It was the first time that cannons were going to be used in war. Because it was Constantinople had walls. So you had to break through the wall. The walls were not like our small walls. These were walls like mountains. That's why it will never be put up again, those walls. Made out of rock and rock and rock. So one of the cannons that were made for him, he had a unique German engineer. And this person brought a lot of cannons. But there was one cannon which they still have there. because it was the cannon of that war. And when you go inside this panorama, it's called Panorama 1458. It's not by the top copy, it's quite a distance away, you must look for it. And many people there, for some reason, don't even know what you're talking about. But it's a unique place. When you visit this panorama, the entire 2 floors is to teach you about what happened in the war. But when you come on that last, upstairs, the highest, they enter you in the war. They have made that scene such that when you just come in there, you think I'm in the war. The painting around you is like real. And you can hear the cannon going boom. And you look this side and you see the whole Muslim army. The flags are real. It was the one place that for half an hour I just stood turning around and around and around. See that army, and you see that army, and you see someone fighting there. And you see one soldier falling down there. That one falling down dead, and the horse is going over this person. And then you will understand what was war in that era. What a thing it was. But you have to be there to understand that. So in that place, they got that cannon there. That cannon is not a picture, the real cannon is there still. And why that cannon was so unique? It was the only one made of that size. And the man who made it was a non-Muslim. But because the Khalifa had hired his expertise, so when he made it, the other engineers told the emperor, the Khalifa, what you will call the Sultan, that it's not going to work, this thing. It has been made too big. So when this thing is going to blow, the whole thing will blow up. It will not manage that weight. And that man said he'll do the job. And Almighty Allah made both happen. That it only shot, I think, 3. On the 3rd bang that went, it made that hole which later on became the reason for the conquest. And on that 3rd bang it blew, and the man who made it was standing next to it, he died. So what they said also worked. They said it's going to blow. And he told the Khalifa, he'll do your job, and he did the job. So because that cannon did its job, they kept it there up till today. And this cannon finally made that hole. So it had its place in history. So now they went out. The war was a unique war. The Christians already were ready. They said enough armies have come. They put up the things. The Muslims went. Before I went, I thought it was like a 1-day or 2-day war. They just landed there, they did some things and they took over. It's only when you get there you will understand. They say on the 6th of April 1453, this war began. It would last for 1 month, 3 weeks and 2 days, meaning 2 months. So it started on the 6th of April. Fighting, going in, coming out, going in, coming out. You can't get in. You're in the waters, you're being knocked. Greek fire is hitting you. You're putting up this, you're putting it. Made so much of preparations. But in the beginning, 15 days, from the 6th to the 20th. On the 20th, there were certain failures that his army saw. He said, with this failure, meaning after many failures, the Ottoman Empire lost its morale and showed the signs of defeat. Ottoman soldiers started defecting from the army. Soon the Byzantine emperor wanted to take advantage of the situation, and he said, I can see your armies are running. So he sent that let's make peace and we won't fight again. In Sultan Muhammad, later on he was known as Muhammad Fatih, in his now cabinet, he calls the people for mashwara. So much of preparation. So the people of the cabinet, the top ministers tell him that whatever happened, but we must sit still. And it's not going to happen. 15 days, so many have died already, let's go. And the army is going. They say that night he is in a pareshan condition. His whole dream is, can I get this land? And now he sees army is going. And he also starts going into what people call like a depression. So at that time, this was also one letter I read, but it's in their language, then you have to get a translation. His sheikh, who started with him when he was a young boy, Sheikh Shamsuddin, now he must be quite old. He gets the message that the Sultan Muhammad is also showing signs of giving in. So he writes a letter. And he writes with respect to the Khalifa. And because he was like the Sheikh and that was his murid, then he wrote in a very harsh tone after that. He wrote that when the Rasul of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said one day someone is going to get this land, then definitely one day someone will get it. If it's not going to be you, it's going to be someone else. So don't be a coward today, carry on. And they said because of that wording, then he put that letter down and he said, I'm not giving up. Whole night he's walking up and down, up and down, up and down. They say Allah Tabarak Ta'ala inspired him that night. Whether a dream or a plan, which they said never in history from the time of Adam alayhi salam was ever done, and perhaps will never be done after that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had once upon a time spoken deep about this conquest. But in the conquest he mentioned one word which perhaps its meaning was never understood. He said when the Muslim armies will reach Constantinople, they will find the only barrier for them is water, the ocean. And this was the golden horn, they needed to get in. But there will be chains there. The hadith never mentioned there will be chains, but there was going to be chains there. You couldn't get in. The hadith mentioned they will find a barrier of water. And suddenly the army will find that the water will dry up for them. And they will go over land and they will come with their ships into the city. So whoever read that hadith would think that one day, like how Musa alayhi salam, he found the water just drying. And they always had, when will the ocean dry? That night Allah Tabarak Ta'ala inspired this Muhammad. So he goes out in the late hours of the night and he tells his soldiers, start cutting trees. It's dark, you can't see anything from the land away. They can just see lights moving, but far away. No one will ever dream. Mufti Muhammad Taqi Usmani says, I went and I visited the place where they cut the trees. I read about it in history, but when I saw it, I still said it's impossible, it could never have been done. They cut the trees of that mountain slope. They made a path. Now they're asking, what you need trees for? He said, make the trees like logs. Because logs can roll. Then he said, bring oil, bring grease, and he greased those logs. Now they're asking, what you going to do with logs? So he said, where's my oxen? Where's my men? You're bringing 1,000 men, he's giving them rope. He tells them, fasten that ship onto your back. The oxen are going to be pulling that ship. The wheels of that ship is now logs. And as that logs will turn, I will take it over the mountain. But you will only understand it if you see that picture one man painted in that era, where you will see thousands of men and oxen, one ship they're pulling. And as they make one pull, and you have someone saying, Allahu Akbar, and everyone pulls, and that ship moves slowly. Because it's moving over 3 kilometers of mountain. One ship. In one night he took 70 ships. Going, climbing mountain. Mufti Taqi Usmani on that he wrote, that I read this lot, but when I saw that mountain I said it could never have been done. How do you take a ship over rock? Rock, moving. One, Allahu Akbar. Now the next morning, the Roman world wakes up and they see sliding down the mountains coming ships. Now it was much easier now because now they just have to control the ship, mustn't go too fast down. So controlling it and it's sliding. And as it's sliding they have reached, here was the chain. And after that there's land. So around the chain they went. They went up the mountains. They went down the mountains and now they landed up far away from the chains. Now the first Muslim ship starts landing. The Roman ship start attacking. Now the attack takes place. Now the war started. We always thought the war ended there. The war only now started. Now you're not inside the city still. You're only by another wall. But because now the Romans for the first time in history they have to defend two sides. They never knew someone could ever come through the side. So the army divides. And now the cannons are brought. Bridges are put up. And now the war starts. And in that war again, so many Muslims passed away. That again the time came where the emperor said, let's stop it. You're not going to get into the city. And again the people are saying, let's just go back. And the Sultan saying, we're right here now. And then the message comes that the Roman world has sent out their ships already. And how much is coming? And now the army starts saying, we're not going to win. And they say, if Sultan Muhammad that night, after making so much of dua, that I never wrote there, but when I was there and I read, that night he's pacing up and down, looking at his soldiers. And he's irritated. So then he says, where's so-and-so? That so-and-so was his mufti, his sheikh. Now he's the sultan, although that's his sheikh, but he's the sultan. So he's angry, he said, where is he going? Call him. So someone comes and says he's at his tent. And he said that no one must enter the tent. So the Sultan said, I'm calling him. That man said that we're not going to go call him. So the Sultan goes himself. There's one guard at the tent. The guard says, I've been told not to allow anyone inside. So he says, everyone doesn't know the Sultan. You hardly get a chance to meet him. He says, I am Muhammad. And as the Sultan of this, I tell you, move out of my way. And they say he enters the tent and he finds his Sheikh in sajda. Just crying. And he looks at that. He never thought. He's wondering, where is he missing? And he just looks at that and he goes out and he says, make sure no one enters this tent. That Sheikh must have made so much of dua in that posture. And Sheikh Sultan Muhammad now walks in his soldiers. On the other side, they are celebrating in the Roman Empire that help is already coming. And they have taken out the Virgin Mary and said, Mary looks after the city. No one has taken over for so long. We will defeat them. They're having their party. And Muhammad, he walks amongst his soldiers. And again that same narration he repeats. And they say when he read that, وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ, that what a wonderful army that will be. He says they broke into cheers. To understand the power of that word, the next day when he gave the command, fight, they say two things spurred them on. One was the Sultan on his horse was in the front line of the war. Where all those arrows are coming, but when they saw Sultan Muhammad moving in the front, then they said what he had, his, what you call like, you have your top bodyguard. They gave their life to make sure the Sultan is not harmed. So all of them are moving, and arrows are raining, everyone is getting knocked. And you will understand what it means to give life. That now they found the hole there. But to get into the hole, one body has to go. The first body that's going to enter that hole, and many places now there's entrances. But the first body that's going to enter is going to get knocked with a rock, or with an arrow, or with fire, and he's going to fly out. So who will say, I'll be the first body? But on that day, before the thing started, you already had your 100 people coming front. And we say we are martyrs for Allah. Martyrs means we the first that going in. So whoever wants to kill us. And that army goes, and they take that entire knock. And behind them is another army, that their dead bodies, the shield. And they stoning and they firing, and that army like that is moving. And only when you see it, you will understand. So there's one town there, it's called Ulubati. Whenever you move in that train, they say, we reached Ulubati, we reached Ulubati. So Ulubati was this Hassan Ulubati. He carried the flag that day. And when he managed to gain entry, and he put the flag down, so on that they even got like a small drawing of Hassan Ulubati with the flag. As that flag hit, there must have been about 50 arrows that went through his body. And he put it down. And when that flag flew, then the whole Allahu Akbar went that we win. And then the defeat then started. Finally the emperor was killed, and it was a unique after that how he came, how he entered. And exactly when Rasulullah ﷺ entered Makkah Mukarramah as conqueror, when Muhammad Fatih entered, they said the whole Constantinople was crying. Because 3 times before this he told them, give up and I'll allow you to go free. And you take whatever you want. And they never gave up 3 times. So many of his soldiers now had died because they were stubborn. Now when you enter, you're supposed to enter and say revenge. So they got his speech written there also. And they say that speech made that entire Christian world fall in tears. They were already crying. They understood we are going to be slaves. And they say when he entered with the look of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the day he entered Makkah Mukarramah. And as he entered, he told his soldiers, not a single one of you will touch anything unless I give permission. And they said they entered with that adab, that respect. And the first speech that he gave, small amount when I was there, I wrote it. As he entered, his soldiers were screaming, Muhammad al-Fatih. Fatih means the conqueror. Muhammad al-Fatih. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Long live our Sultan, long live our Sultan. And the entire procession, and you have to see how the processions come. That group went, and another group, and then the Ottoman Empire, emperor is coming. So the unique thing now with that pomp, but a man who's simple walks in. And as he walks in, he comes out of his horse, dismounts from his horse, and before addressing the crowd, he performs 2 rakats. And he says he thanks Allah who had blessed him with this conquest. Then he speaks to the people of the city who are still in tears. And the bayan, that speech he gave was a little long, but the one sentence I wrote, he said, I am Sultan Muhammad, and I would like to tell you, your brothers and all your people present, that your lives and your freedom has been protected by me. He said everyone was shocked. And then he told whoever has been captured, I want you all to free them. He said if anyone wants fidya, that money must be given for his capture, I will pay that fidya. He started paying. Then he went into the church. The church is what we call today, what Constantine built at that time to say to Sulaiman alayhi salam, I beat you. It's today called the Haga Sufiya. So he entered the church. And he said in the next 3 days, Jummah, we will perform Jummah here. But the church was filled with mosaic paintings. You got mosaic in your bathroom, you know how hard it is to put that small amount. When you go to Turkey, you'll understand they would make huge paintings with mosaic. That church was filled. You got this angel there, that angel, maybe Jibrail alayhi salam, Mikael alayhi salam, they got the angels. You got Mary there, and you got Jesus here, and the whole thing is filled with mosaic. And he says in 3 days time we're making Jummah here. So his people asking, how can you make Jummah with so much of? So he had such architects that in 3 days, without harming that mosaic at all, they were able to make such unique coverings that when you look at it today, you will feel like a flower it is. You will never know that once upon a time this was meant to be Murat. When Mustafa Kamal came, he was burning with this. So he told his people, Mustafa Kamal came how many years later where technology one is on its height. He told his people, remove all this covering. So if you ever go there, look at the walls. And you will see in every spot they tried here. And when they realized they're failing, they went there. They failed there, they went there because they were spoiling the original mosaic. So you see they tried there, they couldn't get it. They tried there. In that now Haga Sufiya, they managed to open up. But only a few. Because that architect that he had at that time was so masters that they did such a thing to that thing that the people can still not uncover it. And they can't open up that murat. So only few are there. The masjid is there. They perform the Jummah Salah. So there was a long story. I took you through a whole conquest. Now we'll have to go much faster. But before that, when I was there, I read in the narration that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when they will take over, they will build unique masajid. Amazing, I said in the narration, the whole ummah built masajid. Here we got a unique masjid. But what is the purpose that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam must speak specially about their masajid? Ottoman masajid. So it's just that thought one day was in my mind, and that day Allah Ta'ala made it that somehow we landed up at what is called the Sulaimaniya Masjid. And this one also perhaps is not so famous because whoever goes there goes top copy and that's all. So Sulaimaniya Masjid is like the biggest masjid in that entire Istanbul, and if you go, but you need a guide or someone to tell you this, or if you heard it from me, then look at that masjid. The Sulaimaniya Masjid was built by what was called Sulaiman the Great, Sulaiman the Magnificent. He came about 8 after Muhammad al-Fatih. He was like the highest now of the Ottoman Empire. And after it, then it started declining. He took it to its height. So every Khalifa that came now, before passing away, would build up a masjid for the world to remember him. One masjid or many. There was a certain architect, his name was Sinan. The Western world today call him Zinan. Up till today, they know him as the master architect of the world. So he calls us Sinan and he says to him that I'm going to pass away. I want to be remembered. So can you put up such a masjid that leaves a message to the world? So Sinan said, no problem. We put up unique masjid. He said, your masjid must match the Haga Sufiya. Now the Haga Sufiya was put up by Constantine with the might of the Roman Empire. It took them, perhaps because Constantine died, so it must have taken them 20 to 30 years to put it up. And now the Sinan is being told, you must match it. So normally Sinan will say that, that you're asking too much. So Sinan says that the Haga Sufiya got too many flaws in it. Too many errors. So I'll never build my masjid like that. What a sentence it was. So the Khalifa asked, what flaws that got? That was put to match Sulaiman alayhi salam. He said, I'll point them out for you. So he did point them out. But the Khalifa was not happy. He said it must match it. And he wasn't happy. And he said, I don't want to spoil my masterpiece. And they had this. But in the ending, the Khalifa is the Khalifa. And he said, I give you a few years, you put that thing up. He thought 10 years. And 10 years to match something that was put up by the Roman Empire was no little time. But because Sinan was stubborn also, he never did it. And after 10 years, the Khalifa wants to know, is the work done? And the people start telling him that man took the money and is gone. Because not a single rock has been moved. And now they write that he comes and he speaks to Sinan and he says, the people have said that you are going to run away tonight. And Sinan says, nothing like that. He says, I don't want to do it. And they have that argument, and they say in anger, Sinan says to him that, the way you're making Haga Sufia, I'll put it up in 3 months. And in 3 months he put it up. They said when he said that day, everyone around him said, you've gone out of your mind. But they said he put it up in such a manner that whatever mistake was in the Haga Sufia, he made sure it never happened in his, although the Khalifa can't pick up the difference between the two. That's why you need an expert to tell you, you see that one is like this one got a shape like this. So the problem that came here won't come here, but that we won't understand. What we will understand remarkable of this masjid is few points. When I entered the masjid, that guide was speaking, so I was listening. The guy said, Sinan showed his expertise in building with a couple of things in this masjid. There's a lot of things, but I'll mention few points you can understand what was this. And for what reason Nabi also mentioned unique masajid they will put up. So they say in this masjid, they said Sinan was well known for taking many things into consideration. One thing he took into consideration was, he said after completion of the masjid, someone told the Sultan that your Sinan is wasting time in the masjid. He asked what he's doing. He said he's smoking huqqah, pipe. So he couldn't believe that. So he comes in the masjid and he sees Sinan right in the front blowing bubbles. So it looks like he's smoking. So he says, you're like a small child, you. So Sinan looks up to him and says, what? He says, you think I'm just blowing bubbles? I'm testing the sound effects of my masjid. Because they have no mic. But in the walls he put open air ducts. You'll understand it if you're in that masjid and a small child is in the back running and making that echoes in the whole masjid. So he said, I'm testing my sound effects. That if it hits from here, that sound, how it will go around the whole masjid. That's one. And unique things in those masajid, like see this masjid got pillars. So if you're sitting behind the pillar, in the best place to sit, because you can sleep. But you can't see the speaker. In those masajid which are so big, wherever you are, you can see the speaker. There will never be a pillar in front of you. So only when you're there, you'll understand how can it be something like that. But they made it such, wherever the speaker is, the whole masjid is for him. There's no barrier in between. They say he took into consideration that there will be 275 candles in this masjid, which needed to light up the place at night. Candle attracts normally insects. Mosquitoes will come. Other insects will be flying around. Then they'll burn, they'll fall down dead. So after every 6, I think, the 7th one, you won't pick it up. Someone has to point it out to you. It's not like the normal 6. It's an ostrich egg. And in the ostrich egg, a certain ether was made to burn. That ether an insect can never stand it. So because of that ether, these 6 and those 6 are protected. And then the whole masjid would never get a single insect moving in it. Because he had that ether moving around. But the kamal of his was 2, which I really was fascinated. One was he knew that there will be so much of the candles burning that you're going to get wax falling. Just to fall. So he built the walls in such a degree and the windows that the wind blows at such an angle that it carries that wax to another ledge on the other side. And it lands on that ledge and then they would gather that wax and they would make ink with it. It's beyond the mind that wax would never fall onto carpet or whatever was there. It would fly in the air. Wind would blow it at what an angle. And they would use it for ink. That was one. And perhaps the kamal of his Sinan was understood when they found this. 1950. 1950 is going to be when they were, the Ottoman Empire was on its uruj. That was what we call 1480. In that time, 1400. Then you have 1500, 1600, 1700, 1800, 1900. Now you got 1950. Mustafa Kamal had come, everything had been finished. So in 1950, one brick, what is called a locking brick, moved out of place in his masjid. So immediately the people were told that this masjid is in need of repairs. And if you don't sort it out, then this entire thing is going to come down. Sinan's masjid, they say, it stood through earthquakes and through fire. It never got, normally an earthquake comes, you'll see the cracks. His masjid held the earthquake. The cracks never came. But in 1950, this locking brick came out. So they say that those people who were put in to put the thing back in place, he says in the 50s when the Sulaimaniya Masjid was undergoing repairs, maintenance workers found a message written in Ottoman Turkish. Meaning when they went up there with the scaffolding to put the thing, they found something was written. There was a date, there was a signature, but they couldn't read it because it was in old Ottoman. So they stopped the maintenance work. They had people brought who can what is called transliterate, then translate, because that language is forgotten. Finally when it got translated, it read like this: as you have found this note, it means that one of the locking stones in the ark has slipped, and you are unsure of how to replace it. And then he described the necessary process required to do so. And he said that then in the rest of the masjid they would always sign messages. Sinan's advice was taken. Today, almost 500 years on, the Sulaimaniya Masjid still stands as a tribute to the great mind and legacy of this proud son of Anatolia. This was Sinan. What a thing. And how late it is also. Now there are two parts to go through. Inshallah by 9:30 I'll try and wrap it up. Then came the time of the fall of the Khilafat. How it shall we won't mention. Mustafa Kamal was brought there, like how all these puppets are brought. They had already brought him. It was 100-year effort before that. This was the Khilafat, so a lot of effort was made. But now when everything was ready, Mustafa Kamal went to England. It was a group called the Young Turks. They were Jewish, all of them. They were called the Young Turks. Then they were sent back into Turkey. They would never have any chance of ever getting into the Khilafat. But at that time, then the world wars broke out. And then the imperial forces of America and Britain were attacking every Muslim land. So the people of Turkey were also scared, will we be able to protect Turkey? So the Khalifa, he was already weak. So this man Mustafa Kamal, that's why they call him Aturtuk. Aturtuk means the father of the Turks. He saved Turkey. But it was all a lie. So he went out for a small battle, like how when ISIS came to power, they went out for a small battle and they won. And then everyone gets shocked that, hey, if a Muslim wins, it means like, he's a good Muslim. It doesn't always mean that. If a Muslim wins in battle, one of two meanings. Because remember, Rasulullah also lost that battle. Winning in battle is not a sign that you are on haqq. Winning in battle could be, one is because you won. One is because the enemy wanted you to win. Mustafa Kamal never won. Britain had given a command, wherever this man fights, lose. So he won the first battle. The news went in the whole Turkey that a young boy leading that army, Mustafa, he managed to beat Britain. And then he went for the second battle and he won. Third battle he won. He suddenly became in charge of the army. When you rule the army, you rule the whole world. So a time came that the Khalifa was told, you look after Islamic matters. I will look after running the state. And then the time came where he had the Khalifa locked up on fraud. And the Khalifa then would pass away in prison. And Mustafa Kamal would be so beloved to the people that they were one short of calling him God now. Whatever he said, he only had a couple of threats. The threats were from the ulama. So he had slowly the ulama assassinated. I will go very fast what he did in the 10 years. And you will understand in 10 years he raped the entire Turkey. Because this was Shaitan. All his hope was on this man that because of you, Islam will never come alive here. The first thing he did is abandoning the Arabic script. How we write Urdu, Alif, Ba, Ta, Sa. And Arabic is also Alif, Ba, Ta, Sa. The Ottoman language was also written with Alif, Ba, Ta, Sa. So anyone who knew Ottoman language automatically knew Quran, Arabic script. He changed that to what is called the Latin script. Latin script is like what we have, your A, B, C, D. So he brought that. Abandoning the Islamic calendar. He said, from today we will never say Muharram Safar. It will only be January, February, March. He hated the word Islam. Number 3, he passed a edict, a command, that public dress has to be in accordance to Western standards. And if anyone is found wearing a garb of the religious elders, he will be executed. So the kurta was taken out. He took out the kurta, it was very easy because people said, no problem, I'll still wear clothing. Now he needed to take out the trouser. But to take out a trouser from a girl who never showed her legs to the world, he wanted to show her whole body. So that's very hard. You tell a woman, show your legs. So he closed the madaris. At that time the masajid had reached 70,000. 70,000 masajid imams were removed. In today's time the BBC makes a big story about it. Erdogan is removing so many thousand. So many thousand who showed that they were ready to kill the people of Turkey. But BBC says so many, 70,000 masajid. Every imam was removed. And he had his own man put in to talk the talk of Mustafa Kamal. So from the pulpit a new Islam was being taught. What is called modern, atheistic, Western. He gave the edict that the adhan will be called out in the Turkish language, not in Arabic. He even started with salah in the Turkish language. It lasted for a couple of days and the imam found it very hard. Because how you carry on in your Turkish language? So then he gave that up. But the adhan wasn't called in Arabic. He banned the learning of the Quran. Which one person said at a time to learn Quran in Turkey, they kept it alive where the ustad would tell the student, my life is at stake if I teach you. So I'm going to travel by train. When I get in the train, I will go in this cabin. You meet me in the cabin and you read your sabak to me. And that was his lesson. The next day I'll travel by train. You meet me in the cabin, you give me your sabak. In those places, Quran was taught. But Allah Pak kept. The other day they had a march in the streets of Turkey of Tahfizul Quran. Meaning how many boys memorized Quran? Because it was banned. So I think there was 50,000 or something, I'm not sure. 50,000 boys walking in the streets to show we are all hafiz of Quran. So you can't beat this kitab. This is the beginning. He banned the learning of Quran. But now to get out the trouser, he closed the madaris. And he said every young girl and boy must go to school. Like how we all go to school. But in school, uniform is necessary. And in the uniform, special emphasis, a girl cannot cover her hair, her neck, and she must wear the skirt. Now because that girl is a 6-year-old, 5-year-old girl, the mummy says, so what, she's so small. But that girl who doesn't put on a trouser when she's small, will always find it's too hot when she gets big. So suddenly Turkey became naked. And when Mustafa Kamal died, and this is how we'll end it, because when I entered there, I just said, Mustafa, what you did to this land. That when he died, I'm sure at that time, Shaitan, Dajjal must have come to congratulate him before the angels started punishing him. So to tell him, well done. You changed the whole world. There's no more Islam left. So when I reached there, I was feeling it. They used to say Allah, like how we say. And I learned one lesson from there. The word Allah. He passed a verdict, it is not allowed to say Allah in this land. You must say the word Tanri. Tanri means God of the blue sky. So you might say, what difference? But then why he had to pass the law? He never wanted Allah to be said. When I read that, immediately I thought about me and you. We say God. God is not a translation of the word Allah. And is not a translation of any of the sifat of Allah. You got Rahman, you got Rahim, you got Malikul, Quddus, Salam. Translate any of them, no problem. You can call him the benefactor, you can call him the most merciful, you can call him the creator. Allah can be called by any of his names. But God does not feature in any. But for some reason we all say God. So when I read that, I said, Shaitan doesn't want Allah, he replaced it with God. So when I came back, I said, let's look what's the meaning of God. And no one knows until today what God means. No one knows. So the man who made that word could have had good intentions. He could have had very bad intentions also. That he could be referring to someone besides Allah. So that word Allah, for him to pass a ruling, say Tanri, not God. And then until that day it was called Islambul. Islambul means the city of Islam. He changed the name to Istanbul. Istanbul also got no meaning. Just he couldn't stand the word Islam. Islambul. So then finally in this last, now I reached Turkey now finally. As I landed there, the first place you're going to go to Turkey is what is called the Sultan Ahmed Masjid. And in the Sultan Ahmed Masjid, I'll give you my experience and you can understand the rest of the story after that. So when I came back, I wrote a little bit. And I wrote it because I knew I'll forget it after 1 year. Lucky I wrote it because today when I'm thinking what to speak, I couldn't remember. So at least I had something written. On the first day of our visit to Istanbul, we were directed to the world famous Masjid of Sultan Ahmed. One was Sultan Muhammad Fatih. Later on the Sultan Ahmed came. And he was a very pious man. You can understand when you read what's written about him, how he hated pictures. It's the unique thing for today's time. That in that time he hated pictures of living things. So they got it written there. That the Sultan could not stand to see pictures of living things. The Westerners, they call it the blue mosque. And why we thought it's blue, but there's nothing blue about the masjid. It's just that when the sun shines on the pane, then inside the masjid you get a bluish like effect. So they call it blue mosque. It's called Sultan Ahmed. So when I reached there, one feeling was going through my mind. So I wrote this, in order to subdue the spiritual light that permeates from the masajid, because masjid gives out nur. So Mustafa Kamal, among the filthy things he did, one thing he did is every masjid has to become a museum. He made every masjid, 70,000 masajid of Turkey, he converted everyone to museum. So you say museum, so what? But a museum meant that in this masjid, and we saw it, and when I knew I'm going to see it, I was burning with anger and hurt. But when I saw how it's happening, I said, Allah is stronger than everything else. What he did is a museum. So in the museum, who's going to come see your museum? The filthy European woman. In their filthy, naked bodies. A woman who is going through her dirty phase. She's not allowed to come into the masjid. Here that European who is continuously filthy. With her legs exposed, her hands exposed, her neck exposed, her hair exposed, is going to now walk in the masjid as though this is a park. She's going to sit in the masjid, she's going to stretch her legs out. He wanted the masajid to be desecrated to the worst of extent. So he invited the prostitutes of Europe, come and sit in this place. So it's free, other places you pay, there it's free. So you see the buses and the buses all lined up there. So when I looked at that, I said, what? This is shaitan at its height. And it really hurt me. It was thus with a deep feeling of sorrow and hurt that we proceeded towards the masjid, surrounded on all sides by tourists rushing to gain entrance. From afar our eyes fell on the sad sight of non-Muslim men and women, gaily striding into the masjid, taking selfies. And there I was introduced to selfies. Everyone, selfie. I'm in the masjid, take a selfie. This was my first perception of the scene from far. However, as we proceeded ahead and glanced at the situation from close quarters, a different picture came to the fore. One that brought a smile to the lips, a unique thrill and awe of the fantastic workings of Almighty Allah. So what did I see? So to make it short, when I entered the masjid, I found they had a small room. At the room, they got certain things written there in English and in other languages. The crux of it is those in unsuitable attire And they got it nicely, so no one feels shy, no one feels bad. Those in unsuitable attire are required to don additional pieces of garments provided at the entrance. So they already warned you, so that woman wants to see. And because it's free, when you get something for free, you do whatever the person says. So that auntie now, we Muslims, so they're wearing kurta and niqab, so they tell you carry on, carry on. But that auntie, they just tell her nicely that, will you put on this? So they give her a scarf. I never bothered about it, and normally you won't even look. So she started putting on that thing. But what made me look was, then shoes must be removed. Non-Muslims must confine themselves to a designated area at the back. So the new government not letting them come in the masjid. One part of the masjid, but they kept it for the back. Only where the women are performing salah. They don't let them come in. And the permission for salah entry will only happen after salah. So couple of things. But what caught my eye is they gave that girl, and they give all the girls. That European girl now was given suddenly a burqa. What fascinated me was the sight of non-Muslim women happily donning the Islamic modest attire in order to receive permission to enter. So I never wrote this here, but what happened is, the one girl behind me, she must have put it on. So she said either to her boyfriend, husband or her friend, that how do I look? So that person said, gorgeous. So I wasn't going to look at a gorgeous girl. But what made me turn around was, he called her gorgeous when she was looking like a Muslim woman. So she said, take a snap of me, I want to send it home. And I got a shock. That who would have ever thought this girl who never put clothing on would one day happily put on burqa and say, take a snap, how well I look. Because in the West, all they know is the parda makes you look ugly. So she took a snap. So then immediately one thought went to my mind. And it said that when the magicians came to Nabi Musa alayhi salam to combat him, then Mufassirin wrote, because we all know the incident that they threw their sticks, Musa alayhi salam threw his became a bigger serpent. It ate all their small sticks, they all fell in sajda. Pharaoh said, I will kill the lot of you all. They said thousands and thousands of magicians. They all in one tone, they answered to him, you can only rule in this world. We are believing in the one who rules the heavens and the earth. He said, I'll cut your hand and leg, and he did it. They hung. They died there. Ulama write, but in that 1 second they reached such a level of iman which is beyond the mind. So in explaining what took them to that high level, so some wrote the respect they had for Musa alayhi salam. When the time came to throw, they asked him that, do you want to throw first or must we throw? So one was respect for the Nabi of Allah. And the other is that they came, so before that they planned, we'll dress like him. We'll dress like him. Perhaps they did it to mock him, but for whatever reason, Mufassirin write that when Almighty Allah saw them looking like His beloved, He made them like His beloved. So I just looked at that woman and I said, how many people in Europe are accepting Islam? She's putting on the garb here. Who knows when she goes home, she's showing her whole family. You know how I felt in that few minutes. So suddenly I was shocked. And at that moment as I walked, I said something softly. I said, Mustafa, the very plan that you did to make sure the women of Istanbul and Turkey remove their trousers. You put up schools. So I said, you took out the trousers of the women of this land. In your very plans, Almighty Allah put the trousers on the European women. Because you invited them, yeah? You took out the trousers of the Muslim women. In your own place where you said, oh European women come, Almighty Allah put trousers on them. So then I walked in Sultan Ahmed. As I walked, then we were now in the courtyard, whatever they have. So I saw all the non-Muslims standing. So a couple of things. In the beautiful courtyard of the masjid, I found scores of tourists lining up at the walls, attempting to understand the beautiful frames that had been hung across. Here too I was gripped by the awe of divine power, because I witnessed non-Muslims, with the aid of Islamic frames, happily educating themselves regarding true Islam. What I saw, the first was a frame which was called the tree of mankind. So they only know in their world that we were born from a monkey. But the tree of mankind starts with Adam alayhi salam. So they got Adam written there. Adam. And whoever put that there, you can see the unique mind of the Muslims of Istanbul today. So he put that Adam tree. And as that tree is going down, he's bringing the different Anbiya that came. And he's highlighting the Bani Israel, Yaqub alayhi salam. And he got there, the Israelites. And then from there he shows Yusuf alayhi salam. And the Christian world knows this. And then he brings it to Mary, Maryam. And he brings Jesus Christ. So that man now is showing, that man who was next to me, I saw it and it thrilled me. Because his small son, he's explaining as he's taking a picture, because selfie is everything. So he's taking a picture there also of that. And he's telling his son, you see, Adam. And from Adam came this one. But where the branch came out is when you come to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham, the father of the messengers. Then it branches out. And you get Ishaq alayhi salam who starts the Bani Israel. And you get Ismail alayhi salam and it comes to Muhammad, the final messenger. So when I heard that man following it for his son, and he said, and you see it comes here and it branches, and he was, whatever, Isaac, whatever it was. And then he said that he couldn't hide it. And he said, and the other son was him. And he said, from him came Jesus and from him came Muhammad. And where you ever would think a Christian man would say it, that from the father of the messengers Muhammad came. Because they don't know that Muhammad. So I was thrilled, like first time they introduced that we're from the same family, me and you. And as they went to the next frame was the Kaaba. And to see those Christians taking pictures of a picture of the Kaaba. But what was written on top there? The first house built for the worship of the Almighty by the father of the messengers, Abraham. He never say Muhammad's house. So the father just told the son, Abraham. Suddenly the son is looking and saying, where is this? Because if Abraham built it, how come I never saw it? And they see thousands or whatever millions making sajda in front of that Kaaba on that picture. We saw it real. So we weren't thrilled. But when you see a non-Muslim looking at it, never in his life he saw people make sajda, maybe only in the raves. He saw them down. But in worship, millions not moving. So they took the picture. And then there were other frames which gave a lot of messages. One frame was the final sermon of the messenger Muhammad, treat your woman with respect. And the man is reading that. And then there was one day that the messenger told as the army was going out, you are not allowed to kill old women. You are not allowed to kill people in the churches. You are not allowed to cut fruit-bearing trees. You are not allowed to hurt the young. So as I read that, I said, I'm sure this is the answer to the ISIS world. You are not allowed this, you are not allowed. Now that man is taking a picture. The messenger of Allah said. And finally in our last 2 minutes we entered the masjid. Now I'm looking at these Europeans when they entered. So the Muslim men are in the front. Turkey was banned from Quran. Allah Ta'ala revived it in that masjid. I don't know about the other masajid, but I'm sure it's starting. After every salah they read one ruku. So we normally after salah, we might read our sunnah and that's also fast and we out. They sit. We think we look like an alim. They don't look like an alim. So when salah finished, my son said something. He spoke. Or adhan was going. When adhan was going, my son spoke. Because we speak adhan, speak softer but we speak. The Turkish man next to me gave such a look that as though you have done the biggest haram in the world. You talk when adhan is going, just looked. So I immediately told my son that these people have a lot of respect for adhan. So keep quiet. After salah, they don't move. Everyone remains sitting. We want to go now because we've got a lot of places to see. Everyone is sitting. Now the muazzin will read his one ruku. When I worked it out, I said in a day, they are finishing quarter para. That place which never saw Quran is finishing so many khatams and everyone is sitting. Because the people can't read Quran at the moment. They got that azmat, they just wait that Quran is being read. As the Quran is being read, you got the Europeans who are in the back of the masjid because now they are allowed to enter. As they enter, the first thing they hear is Quran and they see everyone just sitting. So then you see that European also just standing and listening to Quran. They thought he'll ever listen to Quran. So I saw them listening to Quran. And then I saw them taking pictures when because the woman reads salah at the back. So as you see that sister going into sajda, you just see them snapping one way. That perhaps in their life they never saw that sign of a woman in modesty also falling down in sajda. And as in his sajda, that man and woman are just looking and taking pictures. And I said that this is a da'wat which perhaps we never thought we'll ever manage to give. Allah Tabaraka told Mustafa Kamal, you call them, so I'll use you to give them Islam. And Islam is spreading in the European world. How? And that was before this happened. Now you can understand, finally when I came back, then I made a little bit of research into what's happening in Turkey, how things are changing. So I read one article, a couple of articles. But the one that really made me happy was when the one person, he was writing to the Turkish military. Because the government before Erdogan, they tried to bring Islam alive. And then the president, he resigned. Because the Turkish military sent him a message. They said to him that, we want to remind you that this land will never forget the legacy of Mustafa Kamal. So if you dare try to tread a little out of his way, we will remove your entire cabinet. So that president had to resign. And then came this next movement, what we're calling now the Erdogan movement, for the last couple of years. But they had to play such a fine line because the military was always... So when I was there, this man wrote to the military, meaning he's writing, he's saying, wake up, because this Erdogan is such a snake. He's writing, because all hypocrite. He said, do you not see how he's changed your entire education system? So although he's not saying Islam, but within the next 10 years, he's going to bring an entire Muslim look in this land. And he gave one example. And that was the unique thing I saw of this Erdogan. He never invited towards Islam. He never invited to the Khulafai Rashidin. All he did is he invited the people of Turkey to the Ottoman Empire. He said, these are your grandfathers. He never took Mustafa Kamal out, although we know he was the biggest of shaitan. But he never said Mustafa Kamal evil. All he said, he was your grandfather, that's your great-grandfather. So everywhere they showing, come to the legacy of the Ottoman leaders. The Ottoman leaders had the burqa for the woman. They had the kurta for the men. They had the imama. So he invited. So in the schools he made a law that every child when they reach matric, they must learn the script of the Ottoman masters. He said that's our language. If we don't know our language, who we are. So that man is writing, he said the snake is not teaching you the language of the Ottoman. He's teaching you the script of Quran. And he said, oh military, if you don't wake up in 10 years time, the entire land of Turkey will know how to read Quran. He gave that message. That's why the scoop happened. They understood that things are changing. So in the beginning I started with 100 years. Allah Ta'ala said 100 years you'll see a revolution. At the moment I think from the time Mustafa Kamal died, it's hitting about 80 to 85 years. So I'm thinking in the next 15 years, then we will wake up again and we say, where did this come? And the world will forget once upon a time it was zero flat. Islam will be alive. So that's how the world is changing. This whole thing was done that time, but because of now what's happening. So a lot of people say, but in BBC we don't see this. So don't ever listen to BBC regarding Turkey. Because BBC is burning with anger. They never thought that that coup will fail. They never thought it will happen. So now whatever they say, they'll always try to show he's bad, he's evil, he's harming the people. So don't listen. BBC never spoke the truth in their lives, they'll never speak the truth. But there, you know, those people who are ready to put their lives in front of the army tank, there must be something they have love for that president that you're going to put your life there. And we make dua that Allah Ta'ala looks after this land. This is the hope of a beginning of an Islamic revolution. And if they unite, and Allah make them unite, He's uniting with the Arabs, He's uniting with Pakistan. Now that old Hanafi, Salafi story is dying out. A lot of unity is coming into the Ummah. So make dua, it happens. And if Allah unites the Ummah, then again that Khilafat will be re-established. Allah Ta'ala make it that we see it also, it makes us thrill. But before that time, take a trip if you can, visit this land. Enjoy the sights that you will see there. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa barik wa sallim. O most Rahim, Allah most Kareem, Allah most forgiving, Allah most kind, Allah. O Allah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us, Ana inda dhanni abdi bi, that Almighty Allah has declared that how my servant thinks of me, I will deal with him like that. O Allah, today we sit with a positive mind. O Allah, we sit with the hands raised in front of a unique Creator. O Allah, we are positive, we are hopeful. O Allah, we understand that a revolution is taking place. O Allah, we have hope that now Islam is not going to fall, but day by day Islam is going to rise. O Allah, as the hadith has promised, that you treat your slaves how they think about you. O Allah, we look at you in the most positive of manners, in the most positive of light. O Allah, Islam went through its decline. O Allah, let our eyes be blessed that we will see the uruj of Islam. We will see the unique sun of Islam rise. O Allah, bless one of us, that myself, the people who are listening, those that have ta'alluq, those that are friends, those that are relatives. O Allah, our children, O Allah, our progeny, O Allah, they become the next flag bearers for the garden of Islam. O Allah, in the next garden they become the roses of Islam. O Allah, they become the scholars for the next generation of Islam. O Allah, they become the flag bearers of Islam. O Allah, let every one of us, O Allah, let every house of ours become a house of tajdeed. O Allah, let the revolution of Islam take place at our hands. O Allah, let us see those unique days where the word La ilaha illallah will be recited in every parliament, in every house, where Quran will be recited, where drugs will come to an end, raves will come to an end, filth and dirt will be brought to an end. Every person who walks will walk with an imama. Every girl will have a burqa. Every face will be covered. Oh Allah, it will be an environment of iffat, an environment of purity, an environment of modesty, honesty, trustworthy. Oh Allah, it will be an environment when the word Allahu Akbar will be said, then thousands and thousands, millions and millions will fall into such. Oh Allah, bring that day alive. Oh Allah, in our own life, bring that day alive. Allah.